Keep digging, Cornelius. You'll find evidence of the master of this house. An ape.
A very long time ago, there was a split, a branching off. Now, sticking with an analogy I like to use, it's a tributary of a large river, the Hominid River. We won't get too deep into the source of this river, but along the way, tributaries have sprung from it. Some continued on and formed other tributaries, and some of those dried up. Some grew deeper, longer, and are still going. About 6 to 8 million years ago, the Hominid River split into two. Why or exactly when between those 6 to 8 million years, nobody knows. It formed two separate rivers. One, the Pan River, led to the village of chimpanzees. The other one, the Hominin River, led to the Red Sox, the Bruins, and all the other best teams in the world. Strictly speaking, the Hominid branch led to us, to you and me, and it will continue on. And who knows where else it might lead. It's been around for so long we can't wrap our minds around it. Now, before it got to us, there were other tributaries that branched off from the Hominin River. They went a little ways and then their tributary dried up. This is their story. Well, this episode is one story about one hominin who braved the rapids of Hominin River 6 to 7 million years ago.
There is grandeur in this view of life.
Welcome to Evolution Talk with Rick Coast, an introduction to the oldest story ever told.
One day, in 2002, after digging in the dunes of Chad, a team of anthropologists led by French paleontologist Michel Brunei announced a startling discovery. Now, to be fair, they didn't know it was startling when it was found. They were doing what anthropologists do. They were digging. Not in East Africa, where you can find most early hominin fossils, but this was in Chad, right in the Sahara Desert. What made this discovery special is they may have found the oldest fossil of a hominin specimen ever to be discovered, one which dated back to a time shortly after, in an evolutionary timescale, which means millions of years, after the hominin split from the branch that led to the chimpanzees. But the researchers wanted to know, was this truly a hominin? Was it the oldest species yet found in the tributary that eventually led to us? So, what did they find? They found, between 2002 and 2005, a mostly complete skull. They found parts of a jawbone, some teeth, including a canine, an incisor, some molars, and a femur bone which may or may not have been part of the same species as the one the skull belonged to. It's this extra bone that led to a bit of controversy, but we'll get to that in a few moments. The skull was named Tumi, which means hope of life, and the species, for they knew this was something new, they named it Sahelanthropus tchadensis. The genus name Sahelanthropus is derived from the Sahel region in Africa, where the first specimen was found, and anthropus, which is Latin for human. The species name tchadensis refers, of course, to the country of Chad, where the fossil was discovered. Now, the team used radiometric dating to place the samples in the 6 to 7 million year range. So now onto the skull. The skull itself reveals a mix of human and ape-like features. It has the prominent brow ridge, and a face which sloped. The teeth itself are more human-like than in apes, showing features that hominins lost after the split with the genus Pan. The cranium itself was small, and the brain size was very close to that of today's chimpanzees, which leads us to believe it may have even been similar in body size. Obviously, more bones will be needed to determine that for sure. But there's something else. It's what led researchers to place Sahelanthropus tchadensis in the hominin category and not the tributary that split off to become the chimpanzee. This is the controversy I mentioned just a moment ago. Sahelanthropus tchadensis appears to have been bipedal. Bipedalism, or the ability to walk on two legs, is a defining characteristic of the hominin group, which includes modern humans and extinct human ancestors. When you look at the Sahelanthropus skull and turn it over, there's a hole called the foramen magnum. That's where the spine connects. In chimpanzees and other early hominids, that hole is toward the back of the skull. In hominins, it's closer to the front, meaning the skull can sit somewhat balanced on top of the spinal column. This means, or could mean, the animal stood upright. Or does it? Remember I mentioned the femur bone that was found? Well, the femur sat in storage until it was found and studied. Now, this bone wasn't categorized as belonging to the Sahelanthropus skull specimen found at the same location, but a 2020 study concluded that the femur displayed characteristics of a non-bipedal primate. The results were published in the Journal of Human Evolution. And if this is the case, and it does belong to the Sahelanthropus specimen, it's decidedly not a hominin, according to the study. Perhaps it instead belongs to another hominid branch, like maybe the Gorillini, which led to the gorillas. Well, 2 years later, in 2022, the French primatologist Frank Guy, along with some colleagues, also examined the femur and a couple of forearm bones that were part of the original discovery but separated. Their analysis came to the opposite conclusion. Sahelanthropus was bipedal and deserved its place as the earliest hominin species yet discovered. Well, apparently you can't keep a good hominin down. But the jury is still out on a final verdict. More bones will be needed to firmly place it where it belongs on the hominid river. Wherever it lands, it's certainly special, and it doesn't take away from its uniqueness. If it was bipedal, as the location of the foramen magnum suggests, it may have also spent considerable time in the trees. The forearms, if they in fact do belong to the same species as the Sahelanthropus skull, seems to indicate as much. You know, it really is truly amazing the things that we can deduce from just a few small bones. Now, our family tree is not close to complete. New discoveries pop up every year, if not more often.
And now, with Tumai, we are writing one of the earliest chapters of our story.
That was Michel Brunei, the paleontologist who discovered the Sahelanthropus skull he called Tumai. Our knowledge continues to grow, and we continue, as Professor Brunei says, to add to the volume or volumes that is our hominin history. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Evolution Talk. I'm Rick Coast, and if you find value in this show, and I really hope you do, please consider supporting it at evolutiontalk.com. There you will also find show notes and source material for this very episode. You'll also find ways to contact me at the site. I'd love to hear from you. And I hope your week is going well, and until next time, please take care of yourself.
Evolution Talk is a Rick Coast production.